The entire world is looking at this mystery, but everyone is completely missing the most chilling puzzle piece, the automobile. They are skirting around the issue instead of demanding the hard truth. Mainstream media cannot stop talking about the disguised prowler, the dark rucksack, the demanded payouts, and the tampered electrical box. Yet, the riddle of the getaway ride, which remains the undeniable beating heart of this entire dark saga, keeps hovering in the shadows without anyone daring to bring it into the light. Did that very exact automobile transport Nancy Guthrie into the unknown on that fateful night she vanished without a trace? Should that be true, does this ride directly tie back to the duo whose identities have haunted this case from the very beginning, Tommaso Cioni and Dominic Evans? Listen closely, because I am about to reveal the terrifying detail that the general public is completely blind to. As of March 11th, 2026, a ride undeniably linked to Tommaso Cioni, the final individual confirmed to have laid eyes on Nancy before the darkness took her remains locked away in police lockdown. They have not given it back, and they certainly have not cleared it. It is actively being torn apart for microscopic clues at a garage managed by the Puma County authorities. We are 6 weeks deep into this nightmare, and authorities remain dead silent on the reason. This is the exact focal point where our journey begins today, and we will ruthlessly pull this single thread until the entire truth unravels. As night fell on Saturday, January 31st, 2026, 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie, the beloved mother of morning broadcast star Savannah Guthrie, enjoyed a family meal over at her daughter Annie's residence down in Tucson, Arizona. She had simply caught a ride share over there earlier in the afternoon. Following the gathering, her son-in-law, Tomaso Chioni, personally chauffeured her back to her place. That brief trip consumed roughly 10 minutes of their time. He reportedly escorted the elderly woman straight to her threshold, watched her secure herself indoors, and departed. That exact second marks the absolute final time her existence was visually verified by anyone. The terrifying events that unfolded over the subsequent midnight hours have ignited what is now among the most aggressive, high-stakes federal manhunts the nation has seen in modern times. At precisely 1:47 in the early morning of Sunday, February 1st, her smart porch camera was suddenly plunged into utter darkness. By 2:12 in the morning, digital ghosts salvaged from hidden server files by federal agents revealed a heavily concealed, equipped intruder, covered in dark sleeves, hand protection, and lugging a black wilderness pack. This phantom stood right at her entryway. The figure physically ripped the surveillance lens from its bracket, deliberately dragging potted foliage into the frame to completely blind the digital eyes. The real horror strikes at 2:28 in the morning, when the vital medical device regulating Nancy's heart violently ceased its digital connection with her cellular device. Lead authority figure Chris Nanos from the local sheriff's department went on record, stating detectives pinpoint this exact minute as the sinister moment she was forcefully parted from her technology. This was no technological glitch. It was a calculated, forced removal. A mere 8 minutes later, at 2:36 in the dead of night, an unknown automobile crept across a private security lens owned by Elias and Danielle Strategulis. This property sits exactly 2.5 miles away from the victim's Camino Royale estate, positioned along a remote, hidden trail slicing straight through the Catalina mountain bases. National news crews physically navigated the quiet path, connecting these two specific spots, absolutely proving that the drive consumes exactly 6 minutes if you take the hidden stretches that conveniently avoid all major traffic lights. These are the very same concealed passages carving straight into the exact neighborhood zones where Tommaso Cioni resides and conducts his daily business. Pathways that this specific man would have practically memorized after spending close to 20 years dwelling in this desert region. Do the terrifying math. 2:28 in the morning, the heart monitor transmission dies. Factor in a 6-minute phantom drive. The mystery ride materializes on film at exactly 2:36 in the morning. There is a haunting 2-minute buffer that law enforcement officially validates perfectly aligns with navigating between those two coordinates. This is no internet conspiracy. This is hardened, verified fact. But brace yourself, because this next revelation transforms this entire web of clues into one devastating, undeniable point of focus. Federal agents drew a strict 2-mile containment ring around the matriarch's property immediately after she vanished into the desert air. Yet, the security setup, belonging to the Strategulus family, the crucial lens that caught the escaping automobile is positioned at 2.5 miles. It was a full half-mile entirely missed by the initial dragnet. Those vigilant homeowners stepped out of the shadows on their own accord after witnessing the terrifying broadcast on their televisions. Not a single detective had graced their porch to ask questions, and that ghostly set of wheels they recorded creeping down that forgotten path at 2:36 in the dark was pointed dead straight toward the exact asphalt web, leading right to the front door of the final individual known to stand next to the missing woman. The son-in-law's personal ride remains locked inside a police compound at this very second. A digital porch lens filmed an escaping ride cruising the most perfect getaway path precisely 8 minutes after her vital life tracker flatlined. Meanwhile, Dominic Evans, the musical partner tied directly to the family, a man whose exact bodily build was instantly linked by online sleuths to the disguised phantom almost immediately after the terrifying clips leaked, sat down with federal agents for an intense 40-minute interrogation, only to be met with total radio silence ever since. 3 chilling truths. 1 burning inquiry. Are we looking at the exact same automobile? If this is your first time diving into the shadows with us, smash that subscribe button and trigger those notifications. We hunt down the hard forensics here, not the flashy tabloid gossip. And trust me, this rabbit hole goes so much deeper. The sapphire Honda CR-V owned jointly by Annie and Tommaso was seized by local deputies right at the dawn of February 2026. Fast forward 6 harrowing weeks, landing us on March 11th. And those keys have not been handed back. It rests silently inside a secured garage bay, completely controlled by the authorities. Getting reassembled piece by piece, after enduring what veteran journalist Dave Mack characterized on Nancy Grace's true crime broadcast as an absolutely relentless, microscopic teardown, official spokespeople for the county assured Parade magazine that this set of wheels remains a massive focal point of their ongoing hunt. Yet they refuse to provide a single clue about when it might be released. Let me be completely clear, that is anything but normal. In a sudden vanishing case of this magnitude, usually, when the authorities officially clear a suspect, their ride gets handed back the second the lab techs finish dusting for prints. But that navy blue Honda, it has been sitting in a police impound lot for 6 straight weeks. A hold that long screams one terrifying reality: either the lab work is an absolute nightmare, or the dark secrets buried inside that cabin are still hiding in the shadows. We know Tommaso Cioni was behind the wheel of that exact automobile when he dropped Nancy Guthrie off on the evening of January 31st. That passenger seat is the very last place anyone can definitively prove she was still breathing. Here is where the blood runs cold if the ride that brought her to her doorstep matches the mysterious shadow cruising down Camino Rail exactly 8 minutes after her heart monitor permanently flatlined. Then the biggest mystery of this entire case shatters instantly. However, another set of wheels is lurking in the background, practically ignored by everyone. Former New York police investigator Pat Brown took a hard look at the home security video pulled by Elias and Danielle Strategulius on Camino Real at exactly 2:36 in the morning on February 1st, and his breakdown was razor sharp. He pointed out the distinct slope of the roof, the cut of the windows, the specific rear panels, and those unmistakable up and down tail lamps. His jaw-dropping verdict: that ghost car is a Kia Soul. Absolutely not a Honda CR-V, a totally average, compact utility ride that blends in effortlessly. It is the exact type of unremarkable machine that vanishes into suburban neighborhoods at 2:30 in the morning without raising a single red flag. If the ex-detective nailed this identification, it flips the script entirely, meaning a pair of completely different rides were prowling the dark that evening. You have the Honda dropping Nancy at her front door early on, and then this phantom Kia creeping through Camino Real a mere 8 minutes post-heartbeat. 2 machines, 2 separate missions. Bringing us to one chilling question: are the exact same hands steering both wheels? The specific pavement that Kia was rolling across only makes this twisted puzzle even more suspicious. Camino Real is a dead-end shortcut feeding solely into East River Road, It is absolutely not a main highway your phone's map would suggest for cutting across the Catalina foothills to the rest of Tucson. Anyone blindly following a navigation app would be shoved straight toward Skyline or Sunrise Drive Massive. Brightly lit avenues packed with government surveillance lenses. Camino Real is a back alley secret you only navigate if you have rubbernecked it 100 times. Specifically because you are a local to this particular Tucson neighborhood. It is the kind of hidden asphalt you memorize after years of commuting, making it your absolute first choice when you desperately need to slip away fast and silent. Completely dodging every single electronic eye in the city. Tommaso Cioni has called this exact pocket of Tucson his backyard since 2006. His workplace sits right on the northern edge of those very same hills, meaning he cruises these twists and turns on a daily basis. From Skyline Drive to East River, right down to the hidden dirt trails, slicing through the Catalina foothills between Oro Valley and the victim's own block on North Camino Escalante. He does not need a map for these streets. They are literally the blueprint of his entire existence. A fact Danielle Stratagulias bluntly pointed out to reporters. She noted that if whoever was behind the wheel had even a basic grasp of the turf, or intentionally scouted the perimeter ahead of time, then the street tucked right behind Camino Real, Camino Escuela would be the ultimate getaway path, since it is a total ghost town completely devoid of patrol cruisers. That chilling realization comes straight from a local resident who wakes up there every morning, perfectly understanding how invisible that stretch of pavement truly is. Whoever decided to hit Camino Real possessed that exact same insider knowledge, not pulled from a glowing screen, but born from intimate experience. The Navy Honda remains locked behind police tape, while that stealthy Kia Soul is now undeniably tagged as the getaway car. Cioni practically had these paths memorized, and Dominic Evans existed right inside this exact same desert bubble. 2 separate vehicles, 2 local guys, a single dark evening, and an agonizing 8-minute gap that crime scene techs are still desperately trying to decode. Federal agents dropped a strict 2-mile dragnet around Nancy's residence on North Camino Escalante and declared it a thorough sweep, deploying legions of officers and eyes in the sky. They utilized advanced biometric scanning, mobile phone tracking experts, and supercomputers capable of devouring 10,000 hours of security tape all at once. Yet they stubbornly halted their hunt at that exact 2-mile mark. The Stratagulias lens was recording exactly 2.5 miles away. And that half-mile blind spot is not just some tiny clerical error. That short stretch of road is the literal difference between cops securing the absolute most crucial video proof for the official record within the first 48 hours. And that explosive footage remaining buried for weeks until 2 everyday citizens got spooked by the news and handed it over themselves. No badge-wearing detective ever walked up and pounded on Elias and Danielle's front door. Absolutely zero authorities realized their porch lens was staring directly down the single most obvious escape path from the victim's house. They only stepped out of the shadows freely because they heard reporters constantly naming Camino Real, the exact street right outside their living room window. They took their tape straight to the media, and that was the only reason this digital goldmine ever saw the light of day. That was the exact moment the ghost car, clocked at 2:36 in the morning, finally transformed into a real clue for detectives to chase down. Just let the catastrophic failure of that missing half-mile sink in when you look at the core mystery of this tragedy. If the mysterious ride cruising Camino Real is officially linked to Cioni or Evans, if this citizen video is the smoking gun proving the getaway path. A digital ticking clock nearly swallowed the most crucial piece of evidence in this entire mystery. Smart security cameras continuously wipe their own memory to make room for new recordings within 30 to 60 days. Any given clip is sent straight to the digital graveyard. Had the Stratagulia family hesitated for even a moment, that chilling 2:36 a.m. video would have vanished into the ether long before a single detective ever thought to knock on their door. The FBI brought out the big guns, sending their elite cellular analysis choppers equipped with high-tech Bluetooth trackers to skim right over the Catalina foothills, desperately hunting for a pulse from NY's pacemaker. These aerial sweeps cast a massive net, pushing way past the measly 2-mile radius the ground troops were stuck searching. From the sky, authorities were looking at a far more expansive and terrifying picture. While the tech soared miles ahead of the boots on the ground, a massive blind spot was left behind, and that is exactly where the infamous Camino Real security clip surfaced. It took the Puma County Sheriff's Department 26 agonizing days, waiting until February 27th, to finally admit something shocking. They confessed that detectives were only just beginning to track vehicles moving through zones way outside NY's immediate neighborhood. It took 4 entire weeks for officials to admit their dragnet was way too small. So, what suddenly lit a fire under them? The internet got its hands on the tape. Absolute uproar from armchair detectives blowing up the Stradigalia family story. Online bullied law enforcement into expanding a perimeter they should have secured on day one. Now, let us connect those dots, straight to the primary targets of this mystery. Tommaso Cioni travels through this precise stretch of asphalt every single day. His Oro Valley campus is perched right at the northern tip of the very same rugged foothills that Nancy called home. The hidden shortcuts, linking his turf to hers, slice right through the massive blind spot authorities completely ignored. If that shadowy ride caught on Camino Real is tied to Chion's inner circle, someone who knows every twist and turn of these backstreets, a phantom who calculated exactly where the cops would stop looking, then that half-mile buffer zone outside the camera's view wasn't a lucky break. It was a masterclass in evasion. Journalists from Fox News Digital knocked on 5 different doors boasting street-facing lenses on Camino Real. Astonishingly, not a single one of those homeowners had ever been questioned by a badge. One local resident, Aldine Meister, dropped a bombshell, revealing she spotted a mystery man lurking near the crossroad to NY's house back in mid-January. Weeks before the nightmare began, this guy was not out for a casual stroll. He was dressed completely wrong for the weather and wore a hat yanked down hard to hide his face. She pegged him as a younger dude who radiated absolute bad news. Definitely not a guy just looking to get some steps in. She got totally spooked, told her husband, but stayed quiet until the story blew up on the news. Meanwhile, another witness spotted an unknown guy hovering around a ditched, video go, dark, red Honda SUV. This sighting went down on February 2nd. That was the very morning after Nancy vanished into thin air, right at the crossroads of Camino Juan Pisano and Pedro Seca, dead center between Camino Rail and NY's front porch. That suspicious Honda sat parked like a ghost ship for roughly 3 full days before suddenly vanishing. 2 creepy strangers, 2 chilling encounters, haunting the exact same path. We are talking about weeks of sinister, scouting-like behavior stalking the hidden roads that link the edge of the police dragnet straight to NY's doorstep. The official hunt gave up half a mile too early, but the dark truth kept driving. When the FBI finally scrutinized the Stradigalia's recording, they found exactly 12 cars cruising through the darkness between midnight and 6 a.m. on February 1st, 2026. The feds had built an ironclad timeline, proving a specific ride was prowling that precise street right when the nightmare unfolded. Yet, an insider leaked a jaw-dropping update to TMZ on February 27th, summarizing those 12 cars in just 2 infuriating words: dead end. However, the feds were not just throwing their hands up in defeat. They had a chillingly calculated reason. They argued that the physical location of those rides, along with their very specific entry and exit routes, definitively proved that none of those drivers had a hand in this vanishing act. They didn't claim the video was too grainy to see, or that the license plates were unreadable in the dark. Instead, they boldly stated that the driving behavior of those 12 strangers did not fit the exact driving profile they already had for the actual predator's getaway. Let that sink in for a second. To completely write off a dozen cars based on how they entered and exited a street, the authorities absolutely must have a master key. They possess a clear, undeniable blueprint of the true suspect's escape route, a map so precise they can line it up against 12 other drivers and confidently say, "Nope, not him." You simply do not make a call that bold if you are flying blind in your investigation. You only say that if you already have the Phantom's exact playbook mapped out, and if the cops are sitting on that kind of goldmine, they undoubtedly pieced it together from the mind-numbing 10,000 hours of security tape they have been tearing through since early February. which drags this entire twisted narrative violently back to two specific rides, the Honda CRV and the Kia Soul. If the FBI already holds the digital ghost of the culprit's exact path in their hands, constructed from secret tapes totally separate from the Stratagalia leak, then those 12 random cars were tossed out for one terrifying reason: they weren't the monster the feds had already pinpointed. That suspicious Kia Soul, the one retired Detective Pat Brone spotted lurking in the shadows of that tape, was absolutely not on the list of innocent bystanders. It was the exact white whale that Security Lens had been waiting in the dark to catch. Now, compare that chilling fact to Chion's blue Honda CRV, which has been mysteriously rotting inside a repair bay for 6 entire weeks. Two deeply suspect rides. With one already flagged by an NYPD veteran as the ultimate getaway car, one machine remains locked in an evidence bay, seized after a relentless hunt, tied directly to the final soul verified to be standing beside Nancy before she vanished into the night within that exact stretch of road. A broadcast from ABC News unleashed a chilling update from authorities, confirming to insiders that detectives have caught fleeting shadows of phantom cars captured on scattered security lenses, though they are still hunting for the exact ride used to spirit her away. Read between those lines, it is a brilliantly calculated statement. They are not admitting a dead end. They are simply holding back their winning hand until the final puzzle piece snaps into place. That tiny word, "yet," is carrying the weight of a massive manhunt. And then, a separate eyewitness account blows the whole thing wide open. Flash forward to February 2nd, merely 24 hours after Nancy faded like a ghost, when a local spotted a nameless shadow lurking beside a deserted, crimson Honda SUV, right where Camino Juan Piano collides with Pedro Seca. That exact crossroad forms a lethal triangle between Camino Royale and Nancy's own residence on North Camino Escalante. The ride sported a smashed-up bumper, while the lurker was painted as a Hispanic male, standing roughly 5 feet 9 inches tall, rocking a neatly edged beard, a flash of silver on his wrist, and a burning smoke pinched between his fingers. That battered cruiser sat paralyzed on that asphalt for 3 agonizing days before suddenly vanishing. When Fox News Digital came knocking, demanding answers about this glaring clue, the Puma County Sheriff's Department responded with deafening, absolute silence. Think about it, a mystery ride parked right on the path connecting the flashpoint to the doorbell lens, sitting there for 72 hours, met with zero official explanation whether this rusted crimson Honda shares blood with the Kia Soul spotted cruising down Camino Royale, or links back to the blue Honda CRV currently trapped under the microscope in an evidence garage. Its sudden appearance on that exact street, on that very morning, is far from a coincidence. This is the terrain screaming the truth, continuously tracing a vicious circle over identical asphalt, identical routes, and 2 incredibly familiar identities. Wiping those 12 random cars off the suspect board did not shut down the automotive mystery. It put a laser focus on it. The singular set of wheels remaining after a dozen were tossed aside is the only one holding the keys to this nightmare. The prowler, who crept up to Nancy Guthrie's threshold under the cover of darkness on February 1st, 2026, came completely untethered, no cell phone in his pocket. That chilling tactical reality was pieced together separately by seasoned intelligence operative Tracy Walder, an alum of both the CIA and the Bureau, alongside cyber sleuth Heather Barnhart and retired federal top brass Jason Pack. This is no trivial tech glitch. It is a terrifying peek into the mind-blowing precision behind this ambush, exposing an orchestrator armed with devastating insider savvy. Modern mobile devices are essentially relentless tracking collars, constantly whispering to nearby towers and leaving digital fingerprints across local routers. They map your every breath in real time without you lifting a finger, meaning packing one into a quiet subdivision at 2 o'clock in the dead of night paints a glowing bullseye on the owner, one that federal agents can illuminate with a simple piece of paper. The phantom at the door knew this game inside and out, ensuring their tracker was either gutted or dumped miles away before the hunt commenced. It was a premeditated strike. Top lawman Chris Nanos over at Puma County admitted that cyber hunters are tearing through signal logs to flag any rogue electronics, hunting for digital strangers wandering where they absolutely do not belong. Within the exact time frame Nancy was snatched into the void, sleuths can reconstruct the block's heartbeat, identifying the normal electronic traffic, the alien signals passing through, and most terrifyingly, the native signals that mysteriously went completely silent right as the tragedy unfolded. Now, aim that investigative crosshair straight at the doorsteps of Tommaso Cioni and Dominic Evans. Both of these individuals lay their heads to rest within the sweeping electronic umbrella covering the Catalina foothills. By all logic, their pockets should be pumping out a steady stream of data into the early hours. Meaning, if either feed suddenly flatlined between the witching hour and 4 in the morning on February 1st, only to spark back to life as the sun broke, that glaring black hole is already baked into the system. We are talking about records swept up by the feds during the opening days of the hunt, footprints that are completely bulletproof against backdoor deletion. You cannot lie your way out of a digital void resting safely on a government server with a permanent timecode. Especially since the timeline of terror does not kick off on the 1st of February. Whispers from the badge reveal that January 11th and the 23rd have become major focal points in this nightmare. Those are the nights when shadowy movements were suspected right outside the boundary lines of Nancy's sanctuary. One vigilant local named Aldine Meister confessed to a national news network that she caught sight of a faceless drifter stalking the crossroads approaching the victim's street right in the middle of January. Another nearby resident echoed that terror, logging an entirely different but equally disturbing encounter down that exact same stretch during that exact time frame. If the digital lifeline of anybody tied to this horror suddenly flatlined on those crucial mid-January evenings right within the exact same dead-of-night stretch, watching that happen across 3 isolated occasions obliterates any chance of a freak accident. It transforms into a psychopathic calling card, echoing with the chilling rhythm of a monster perfecting their craft before the strike. Cyberguru Heather Barnhart cranked the paranoia up another notch, exposing a technological trap that goes way past standard cellular tracking. A piece of tech does not even need to actively log into a local hotspot to drop a breadcrumb. Merely brushing past a home's invisible signal forces the router to log the trespasser's presence forever. The silent digital watchdogs inside Nancy's house and right next door might be hiding the digital footprints of a phantom who crept entirely too close on the shadowy nights of January 11th, January 23rd, and February 1st. Federal agents actually managed to scrape the phantom data ghosts lingering in the cloud servers connected to her front door lens. Naturally, the very same detectives could effortlessly crack open the home network's deepest memory banks for even more breadcrumbs. But the absolute chiller is the vandalized electrical hub found just down the block, completely shifting this mystery into something far more calculated. Authorities have openly admitted they are scrutinizing that smashed box, suspecting it was the exact trigger for the sweeping broadband blackout that swallowed the block the moment she vanished. Several terrified locals confided in news outlets that their own surveillance streams from those crucial hours were completely wiped out or bizarrely tagged as strictly off-limits. An intentional sabotage that severs the community's digital lifeline at exactly 1:47 a.m. This proves Nancy's front porch monitor did not just randomly glitch out, it was part of a meticulously orchestrated blackout swallowing that entire residential strip. The architect behind this knew exactly how the local tech grid breathed. The intruder possessed the terrifying knowledge of exactly which wires to pull, blinding the entire neighborhood before they even took their first step onto her property. You do not get that kind of tactical precision from scrolling through satellite images on your phone. It demands countless hours stalking those specific sidewalks, studying those exact lenses, and mastering the invisible networks powering them. Uncoincidentally, Tommaso Cioni clocked almost 20 years, operating and breathing the air right inside that exact perimeter. Attempting to plunge the street into darkness to cover their tracks might have ironically painted a glowing neon arrow right to their doorstep. When federal investigators finally dropped that spine-tingling porch footage of Nancy Guthrie's final visitor, the general public only gasped at the surface-level horrors. Eyes went straight to the face covering, the tactical hand gear, that dark survival rucksack, the heavy hardware strapped to their hip, and the chillingly methodical, painfully slow pacing of a shadow who had practiced this sinister dance so many times that panic had completely surrendered to pure, cold routine. However, A tiny, almost invisible clue, poking out of the intruder's right breast pocket, slipped past everyone's radar until a former federal investigator and intelligence operative named Tracy Walder tore the clip apart millisecond by millisecond during an explosive true crime broadcast on February 28th. If you squint closely enough, the unmistakable silhouette of an aerial rod pierces the frame. While she could not stamp 100% guarantee on it, her decades of hunting ghosts and dissecting covert field tactics gave her an incredibly sharp read on the item. She zeroed in on the most terrifying logical conclusion possible: a handheld two-way radio. And her logic is utterly flawless. Utilizing an analog radio is the only thing that makes sense when an invisible escape chariot is the absolute cornerstone of a flawless vanish. Having an accomplice means you need a way to whisper from the shadows. Pulling out a smartphone to text a wheelman leaves a massive digital crater you would obviously want to avoid. Now, slam that expert theory right up against the horrifyingly precise chronological evidence we already possess. At precisely 2:28 a.m., Nancy's internal heart device registers its final terrifying silence. Exactly 8 minutes after that fatal flatline, an unidentified ride ghosts down Camino Royale, burning rubber away from the crime zone. That sickening 8-minute gap perfectly mirrors a phantom wheelman idling in the dark, waiting for a silent cue to swoop in, not just a midnight cruiser passing by chance. They were lying in wait, and the absolute only way to synchronize that extraction without blasting their location to every cellular node the feds have been scrubbing since minute one is a simple two-way radio buzzing on a secret analog wave that advanced location tracking tools simply cannot see. Ex-federal detective Jennifer Coffender threw the polite caution out the window and came at this theory with a sledgehammer. She blasted out a public statement declaring that the shadowy figure on the steps absolutely had backup, stating there is zero chance someone pulls off a job this clean totally solo. Pointing straight at the protruding radio wire, she highlighted the flawless synchronization of their twisted operation before taking the theory even deeper, guaranteeing at least a duo was in play. She completely shredded the comforting illusion that this was just some isolated, solitary boogeyman. Take that horrifying two-man team concept and slam it against our main suspects. Tommaso literally chauffeured the victim back to her residence around 9:45 p.m. on January 31st, armed with the ultimate insider knowledge of her floor plan, her daily habits, and the blind spots in her security feeds. He possessed an intricate mental map of every single escape route weaving from her front door to the city limits. Then there is Dominic Evans, his musical partner of almost 20 years in the gritty indie group Early Black, a man whose exact physical dimensions were matched to the terrifying porch video by online sleuths in mere hours. Two individuals, both holding the keys to the very intimate circles that our vanished victim trusted every single day. Both men are tightly bound by decades of crossing the same streets and a musical brotherhood they forged way back in 2007. The beauty of the radio hypothesis is that it completely removes the necessity for both men to have physically stood on her doormat. All it takes is one monster knocking and one ghost revving an engine nearby perfectly synced, wearing matching tactical gear, and whispering on a ghost channel the feds cannot sweep. Coffender hammered this exact terrifying scenario home, warning the public not to casually dismiss a seemingly unarmed bystander without a bag as just some innocent driver. Criminal history is absolutely dripping with sophisticated strike teams who deliberately wear identical uniforms to shatter witness credibility. Seasoned law enforcement veteran and former high-ranking state official Lisa Miller locked in this analog radio theory by bringing an entirely fresh, chilling perspective to the table. Look closely at that porch camera video. The feed is absolutely crystal clear, without a single stutter. As she revealed to Fox News Digital, sophisticated signal disruptors usually scramble everything nearby, instantly freezing even high-tech police computers during routine pullovers. That pristine footage completely shatters the theory of a wireless blackout device, meaning that strange antenna clutched in the suspect's hand must be a tactical two-way radio. We are talking about equipment built for one chilling reason: silently directing an unseen accomplice lurking in the shadows, orchestrating a precise getaway vehicle extraction. At exactly 2:36 in the morning, A mysterious ride crept down Camino Real just 8 agonizing minutes after the victim's heart monitor transmitted its final, fatal pulse. The timeline proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that a driver was lying in wait. While that radio confirms an accomplice hung on every whispered command, let us rewind to the dark evening of January 31st, 2026, when Tommaso Cioni chauffeured his mother-in-law, Nancy Guthrie, back to her residence following a cozy family supper. That fateful transit lasted barely 10 fleeting minutes. He escorted the matriarch right to her threshold, watched the lock click shut, and vanished into the night only for Nancy to evaporate without a trace mere hours later. That exact timeline instantly painted a massive target on Cioni's back, dragging his identity into the blinding glare of a frantic, nationwide manhunt. This suspicion didn't stem from any malicious leaks by detectives, but rather from the cold, hard, universal rule of criminal profiling. Whoever laid eyes on the victim last becomes the immediate focal point, and Cioni held that dreaded title. The frenzy exploded on February 4th when ex-News Nation anchor Ashley Banfield dropped a bombshell, alleging a top-tier police insider labeled him as their primary target. What erupted next was an absolute avalanche of media hysteria and relentless armchair detective accusations. Puma County Sheriff Chris Nanos swiftly attempted to extinguish those burning rumors right out of the gate. He boldly declared that authorities had absolutely zero official suspects in their sights. Yet the deafening whispers persisted, forcing the task force to follow the grim trail of breadcrumbs. Tactical teams descended upon the residence shared by Cioni and Annie, executing an exhausting marathon raid utilizing specialized glowing chemicals, specifically engineered to expose hidden biological secrets washed away from the human eye. Authorities also seized their blue Honda CR-V, towing it directly into the depths of a secure lot. Cioni faced grueling questioning until February 16th, when Sheriff Nanos broadcasted a definitive update. The entire Guthrie clan, including every in-law, was entirely exonerated of any foul play. Law enforcement praised the grieving relatives for their total transparency, formally branding them as innocent, heartbroken victims for the whole world to see. Bizarrely, despite that massive public clearance, the couple's trusted Honda remains locked inside a police bay as of March 11th. It sits abandoned at a garage facility, slowly being reassembled after true crime reporter Dave Mack revealed detectives practically tore the machine down to its absolute bolts. Puma County officials openly admitted they are hoarding the SUV, refusing to offer a single clue as to when the family might get their property back. This eerie limbo between declaring someone innocent while actively dissecting their daily ride isn't necessarily a paradox. Experts point out that dropping an individual from the suspect list doesn't magically scrub their possessions of vital, hidden clues. Ultimately, that very Honda holds the haunting distinction of being the final moving transport Nancy ever rode in. It acted as the crucial bridge between her final moments of safety and the eerie doorstep she allegedly vanished from forever. Should that interior harbor even a microscopic fragment tied to the nightmare of February 1st, be it DNA, a stray thread, or the faintest physical whisper of truth, then keeping it locked down means the lab technicians are still hunting for a breakthrough. Nanos later confronted the relentless witch hunt against Cioni while speaking to the Daily Mail, acknowledging the ruthless chatter of armchair experts. He admitted that critics will inevitably obsess over the fact that the son-in-law was the final soul to gaze upon her breathing. The sheriff expressed deep frustration, warning that society is branding a scarlet letter on a totally blameless man who is, above all else, a grieving relative. While those words clearly aim to shield a devastated loved one from a ruthless mob, they also solidify one undeniable fact the authorities cannot deny. Cioni genuinely was her final human contact. The top cop never once disputed that chilling reality. The official simply argued that proximity doesn't equal a guilty verdict, and legally, being the last witness is completely separate from being the perpetrator. It merely kicks off the interrogations. It rarely seals the coffin. Meanwhile, on March 1st, Savannah Guthrie bravely faced the Today Show cameras following her mother's baffling erasure. She eventually stood shoulder to shoulder at the emotional vigil beside the victim's residence, flanked closely by her sister Annie and Tommaso Cioni. Paparazzi captured the trio locked in a desperate embrace, right next to the massive shrine of flowers swallowing the property's mailbox. Here we have a household completely bonded by unspeakable tragedy. While a key vehicle rots in a forensics garage, and the true mastermind remains a ghost, that impounded ride isn't going anywhere. And this highly classified manhunt is burning hotter than ever. Yet, not a single soul can explain why it takes over 6 agonizing weeks to sweep a supposedly innocent man's car for clues. Literally moments after the feds dropped that chilling porch video on February 10, 2026, the digital underworld conjured up a prime suspect entirely independent of the badge. Cyber vigilantes completely bypassed the police, obsessively dissecting the shadow's stature, shoulder width, beard shape, and even walking gait, ultimately aiming their pitchforks at a single target: Dominic Evans, a 48-year-old 5th grade educator. Imagine being a completely ordinary father to 3 boys, laying down the heartbeat for a Tucson rock outfit named Early Black, and sharing a stage with Tommaso Cioni, the son-in-law of Nancy Guthrie, for almost 20 years. But what unfolded next was far from standard police protocol. It was an absolute tidal wave of terror. An aggressive mob descended upon the musician's residence in the quiet Tucson suburb of Marana. He and his spouse, Andrea, were trapped in pitch blackness all evening, paralyzed as they peered through the blinds at the growing swarm of vigilantes outside. They had to warn their teenage boy to stay far away for his own safety. Andrea later confessed to the New York Times that she felt completely frozen with horror. They endured a grueling night of peeking through the glass, terrified that a single glowing bulb would invite disaster. The drummer eventually shared his chilling ordeal with reporters. He described the deeply unsettling sensation of having his entire identity hijacked by strangers. When asked what fueled this sudden digital witch hunt, his response was surprisingly measured. He pointed to the toxic hunger for digital views and cheap thrills. Sadly, he noted, ordinary folks end up paying the ultimate emotional price for that spectacle. He firmly stated his alibi: he was tucked safely away with his loved ones when the victim vanished into thin air. He acknowledged sitting down with federal agents and Pima County officials for roughly 40 minutes, facing probing inquiries regarding his ties to Chioni, their musical group, and his precise movements from the evening of January 31st into the early hours of February 1st. After that, radio silence from the authorities. Taking a highly unusual step, Sheriff Chris Nanos spoke right to the beleaguered musician during a broadcasted press conference. He condemned the terrifying ordeal as absolute torment, actively encouraging the falsely accused father to drag these reckless online instigators into a courtroom. Hearing such openly compassionate words from the county's top brass carries enormous weight in a situation like this. Authorities simply do not offer that kind of grace to a prime suspect who is actively in their crosshairs. That is the undeniable tone, reserved for a helpless bystander, dragged into a media circus. Someone detectives recognize as a tragic victim of baseless internet rumors. His actual tie to the missing woman is incredibly thin, separated by a single, highly specific degree. He had only crossed paths with her one time, back in 2011, during a springtime gathering at her property. Furthermore, he only discovered she was missing by scrolling through social media. The sole reason his name surfaced is his 19-year creative bond with Chioni, a relative who has already been officially exonerated by the task force. The mysterious disappearance of Nancy Guthrie reminds us how fragile safety can be, even in places that feel peaceful and familiar. Behind quiet neighborhoods and ordinary routines, unseen dangers can sometimes hide in the shadows. Yet, beyond the fear and unanswered questions, this story carries a deeper lesson about vigilance, community, and human responsibility. One powerful message is the importance of awareness. Small details, a camera recording, a passing vehicle, a witness who chooses to speak up, can become the difference between silence and truth. Justice is rarely built on one dramatic clue. It is often constructed from hundreds of tiny pieces that ordinary people notice and share. This case also highlights the strength of collective effort. Families, investigators, journalists, and everyday citizens all play a role in seeking answers. When communities refuse to ignore troubling signs and instead work together, They create a powerful force that protects the vulnerable and holds wrongdoing accountable. Most importantly, the story reminds us to value and protect one another, especially the elderly and those who may depend on others for safety. A caring society is measured not by how it treats the powerful, but by how fiercely it defends those who cannot defend themselves. In the end, truth may take time to surface, but when people remain compassionate, vigilant, and united, darkness rarely stays hidden forever,